Throughout the late 90s, wrestling video games hit their peaks with the likes of WCW vs NWO Revenge and WWF No Mercy. Anarchy, a Japanese developer, had perfected the wrestling video game formula, delivering both WCW and WWF fans a game that allowed them to step in the boots of their favorite wrestlers, formulate dream matches, go down a career mode with different variations in said path during subsequent playthroughs, an in-depth creation suite so you could create any wrestler from any promotion. The list goes on. You can tell they really squeezed every megabyte out of that 64-bit cartridge. I can imagine this was a wonderful time for kids growing up then. However, I'm not one of those kids. The games I grew up with were the SmackDown vs. Raw series, with my favorite being 2008 for one sole reason. This game was the first inclusion of ECW as a third brand. And I'm not going to count SmackDown vs. Raw 06 or 07, because I feel the inclusion of a single arena doesn't count. With my first exposure to ECW being the two one-night stand pay-per-views, where I was made familiar to guys like Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, and the Sandman, who were all included in SVR 08 for the first, and for some, the only time they would be featured in a WWE game. So it made me think, why hasn't anything been said about the ECW video games? Because I'd like to think, being the extreme alternative that it was trying to sell itself as, they must have gotten a sick developer like Anarchy, right? I mean, they did develop some of the most critically acclaimed wrestling games of all time, right? Well, in 1999, ECW would sell a minority equity of the company to Acclaim Entertainment, in which Acclaim was reported to have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars every 2 months in order to help float costs of productions during the last days of the promotion. This was all around the same time ECW was experiencing issues from their pay-per-view distributors, in which they weren't being paid the money that was owed to them. This is just one of the many reasons why and how ECW died. So what I want to know is, did Acclaim reiterate on their success of WWF Warzone, or did they just phone it in? I mean, it's ECW. If any company's supposed to have a cool wrestling game, it's ECW, right? Right? So today, I will be taking a look at every ECW game released, starting with the very first wrestling game to ever receive a mature rating. It's ECW Hardcore Revolution, released for the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, and Sega Dreamcast. I will be taking a look at the PlayStation edition, as I feel it is the most definitive version of the game. The PlayStation version starts by showcasing the promotion with a full motion video cutscene filled to the brim with highlights showcasing the extremity of the promotion, and in doing so, setting the tone for the carnage ahead. Seeing this can't help me get excited for what I'm about to play. And then we hit the main menu. This interface screams late 90s graphic design. From the scratch font to the barbed wire borders, this undoubtedly fits ECW's aesthetic to a T. One look at the dead ECW website and you can tell the developers at least took care with the presentation of the menus and functionality. They're relatively easy to navigate. So what better place to start than with Exhibition? Let's jump right into this. Immediately, I'm blown away with this roster. As someone who's been consuming a lot of the ECW on TNN era, every aspect is well represented here. From main event guys like Mike Awesome, Rob Van Dam, and Sabu, to underrated mid-card guys like Jerry Lynn, Simon Diamond, and C.W. Anderson. And not to mention, we have the Baldies. In video game form nonetheless. But wait, who the fuck is Wild Bill? Not even I remember Wild Bill. Apparently he's been around ECW for some time according to his Wikipedia page. Starting as a timekeeper, then becoming a member of the ring crew, before making his in-ring debut against Axel Rotten. He would then go on to have a match against Taz for the TV title, with no success of course, before finding himself mixed up in Louis Dangerously's Dangerous Alliance. Hardcore Revolution's roster has a perfect representation of guys and girls who were prominent during those first 10 to 20 weeks of ECW's run on TNN. There would be some wrestlers who were surprisingly absent, like Masato Tanaka, which I guess made sense due to his lack of appearances in ECW, as well as being committed to FMW at the time. Obviously for this video, I'm picking Mike Awesome. There is no other correct answer. And who better to face than the one and only leader of the Baldies, Tony DeVito. Now that the match has been set, the game presents numerous options, with many different types of customization to these match types, including the ability to change the options being deathmatch, cage match, last man standing, street fight, and a barbed wire match. Beyond changing the stipulations, you have the option to choose between 3 iconic ECW locations. These are House, which is clearly the TNN stage, Brick, which represents the pay-per-view set, and finally, the famous Elk Lodge Arena. Just look up any shoot interview about the partying scene in ECW, and I promise you, someone will mention the Elks Lodge. For only 3 arenas to choose from, the developers managed to represent the essence of what those sets were at the time, and some of these I would consider to be better than what you see created these days in 2K. There are also settings that allow you to change the time limit and other boring things like that. Nothing too complex. Now that everything's ready to go, I figured it's time to start my first match. I picked Mike Awesome. What could possibly go wrong? The entrances are honestly the most underrated thing about this game. With the limitations of the technology of the time, the developers at least attempted to mimic the actions of each wrestler as they made their way to the ring, with a cover of their current theme that was changed ever so slightly as to not stumble into copyright territories. ECW could never afford to license any of their actual music, so there's no way in hell this game would receive special treatment. These entrances range in quality for someone like New Jack, where they went all out for, whereas Mike Awesome, not so much. Character models look okay. They have that weird PS1 aesthetic, where they would scan the face of a wrestler onto the model and texture around it, with some truly cursed results. Compared to the models from Aki's games, this is fine. For $19.99, I can excuse the limitations, and I'm a strong believer in gameplay over graphics, so actually let's see how this thing plays. If this game has taught me anything from just playing the first 30 seconds, is that we've come a long way in terms of quality of gameplay in our wrestling games. For me, the SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 control scheme is the definitive way to play wrestling games, which I'm sure many of you have played before, or at least familiar with its mechanics. But for the sake of this video, let me go into it a little bit. The game offers light and strong grapples, with light grapples being done with the flick of the right analog stick, and strong grapples being done the same, but in conjunction to holding down the R1 button. The majority of the face buttons are mapped to perform strikes and other utilities such as an Irish whip and the ability to sprint. This control scheme is easy to pick up, but requires some learning to master, whereas Hardcore Revolution forces players to remember several button combinations in order to perform any move beyond a light grapple or strikes. For example, in order to perform a suplex, I have to position my character just right, hit back circle, and pray my character gets to my opponent before they do the same to me, and 70% of the time, they are the one who grapples first. So now I have to memorize maybe 3 moves tops to get by, and one could argue that the combos are simple. An easy 3-button combination should be easy to remember, so stop complaining. But let me explain to you how this game wants you to perform something as simple as an Irish whip. Any other wrestling game, you would press one face button and use the directional pad or joystick and point in the direction you want said Irish whip to go. Whereas in Hardcore Revolution, you press circle to lock up, and for a split second, you must input the command left block and pray you did it correctly, because one of 2 things is most likely to happen. 1, you miss your cue and the AI reverses you, or 2, you fuck up the command and you're forced into one of these long, tedious animations where you watch your guy put on some basic chain wrestling hold before releasing it. That's exactly what I want in my ECW games, rest holds. But what befuddles me is this game has commentary. And in said commentary, almost every time when you're forced into one of those animations, Joey Styles would groan or heckle the player, which tells me someone at Acclaim knew this was a bad inclusion and punished players who haven't mastered the game to be berated and ridiculed for something that's out of their control.
Gee, come on! No! Oh! Man! Oh, come on now!
I can say at points I was having fun with this, but those moments were few and far between. You can't cover something in an ECW coat of paint and deem it acceptable to sell to people like me who expect better. Because you cannot say to me that Joey Styles and the in-game crowd audibly booing me for using weak-looking moves. Well, I guess that is kind of realistic when you start to think about it long enough. So now it's time to check out the career mode, which can be played either solo or with a friend in tag team co-op. Obviously, I have no friends in real life who like wrestling, so I'm riding solo for this one. You can choose from any available wrestler on the roster, regardless of gender, so if you want to see Dawn Marie capture the heavyweight championship, be my guest. No one's stopping you. Obviously, I'm picking Mike Awesome. I did so well with him before, I may as well make him my main, and now I'm presented with a calendar overview of the month. This looks very similar to things I've seen in games nowadays, so it's nice to see something that looks so familiar. Much like many other games, you start at the bottom of a leaderboard and have to fight your way up to the top to become #1 contender before challenging for that respective championship. Simple enough, right? But wait, who are these? Who is Nurse? Trainer? A-Master? Surely that's Ass-Master. But who the fuck are these guys? Fucking Sound Guy? What is this game? At least we know who Wild Bill is. So let's jump right into this. Our first match is up against Nurse. And by God did we have a battle for the ages. I mean, just look at us go. Look at how close this match was. After that 5-star classic, I attempted my next match, which was a tag team match. I haven't gotten a chance to check out the tag team... And I lost? Wait, what? I lost? Mike Awesome lost to a dude named Trainer? Okay, Zach, keep your composure. Let's not let this loss get to me. The TV taping is next, so we can look good there. And my controller died. Well, I guess that's as far as we're going to go in career mode. It's not horrible, but it's nothing to write home about. You may as well just play Exhibition, where you can actually wrestle people you know. This game features 2 creation modes, Create a Pay-Per-View and Create a Wrestler. Create a Pay-Per-View allows players to create an entire show from scratch, featuring up to 8 slots for custom matchups. The only real customization here is changing the graphics that appear around the arena, as well as the logos displayed on the ring apron and canvas. These feature some of the more popular pay-per-view designs like November to Remember and Living Dangerously. Create a Wrestler is here, which is always a necessity in wrestling games. I always take any opportunity to recreate Paul Bram as many times as possible, and my attempt here was pretty laughable. It's easy to say that this is due to the lack of variety of customization. A majority of items here have been repurposed from Warzone, leaving Create a Wrestler with almost an identity crisis of sorts. And lastly, we have the Cheats menu, which allows players to unlock a variety of fun modifiers, such as Big Head mode, Big Feet mode, Big Hand mode, Little Hand mode, Fat Man mode, you get the idea. As well as you could unlock fun playable characters like Joey Styles and Judge Jeff Jones, as well as hidden legends like the original Sheik. However, these aren't attained through cheat codes, but rather be hidden behind specific objectives like winning a certain championship or complete a certain mode with a specific character. This game has plenty of secrets for the player to find, but those secrets aren't worth sloshing through all this jank to get to. So for ECW's first attempt at a video game, what did I think? Well, honestly, I have mixed feelings. On one hand, this game is visually ECW. I like how the arenas look, I adore almost everyone on the roster, and it has enough of that in it to make a fan like myself happy. But it's when I have to force myself to actually play the game, I begin to feel this frustration building with each match. For this video, all my play sessions couldn't be longer than 3 matches at a time with long breaks in between, which goes to show this game does not make a single attempt to teach the player nor give me any breathing room to learn, let alone make an attempt to master. At the time, Acclaim's ECW Hardcore Revolution would receive less than positive reviews, with GameSpot awarding it a 4.2, citing that ECW Hardcore Revolution isn't a bad game by itself, but it in no way represents the style of wrestling that ECW uses. It has absolutely 0 points going for it in the originality department, and the game comes off as a real slap in the face to the Federation's hardcore fans. So how would Acclaim follow up this less than stellar reception of the hardcore brand? Would they take the criticism they received, or would history be doomed to repeat itself? because not even 10 months later the sequel would be released. It's ECW's Anarchy Rules, released solely for the PlayStation 1. Again, fans would be treated to another video package, this time set to Debonair by Dope, which was Rhino's theme at the time, and we greeted with, oh my god, what have they done to the beautiful menus of the previous game? It's as if the developers had just watched the first Evil Dead movie and figured to themselves that the Book of the Dead would translate into a comprehensible menu. This disgusting bioorganic menu has already made me want to turn the game off. But for the sake of this video, we shall persist. Just like the last game, we are given a decent sized roster, which covers the majority of the wrestlers that were with the company up until its death in early 2001. However, with the losses of guys like Raven and my favorite Mike Awesome, the developers added the likes of Masato Tanaka, which feels redundant if I can't have Mike Awesome. Sandman is back too, and is a much welcomed addition to the game. Acclaim would add one extra arena to this game, and it would be that representation of the classic ECW arena that I was asking for in Hardcore Revolution, and honestly it looks great for the time. I'm glad that the jungle entrance is on full display in this game. Entrances have seen some updates as well, in addition to some of the licensed music, which equates to maybe 4 songs, so you'll see guys like Dusty Rhodes, Tajiri, and Mikey Whipwreck all come out to the same song. This applies to numerous other wrestlers on the roster as well. One special thing about Anarchy Rules is that the game would see New Jack change his theme for the first time ever, from Natural Born Killers to this new theme in which Jack himself would commission to be made, as well as providing some of the vocals.
No gain, no pain is coming to the one who gets in the ring with New Jack.
This theme was intended to be used outside the video game, but honestly it's good he never changed to this. I don't think it delivers the same punch as Natural Born Killers. The gameplay would see a decent overhaul with a majority of the combos shortened to a maximum of 2 strings per move, whereas in Hardcore Revolution, 2 presses of the gamepad would be needed to be performed prior to pressing the appropriate face button to do say like a suplex. Now, almost every face button has a move associated to it in combination with a single direction. This addresses major complaints fans had with the previous title, and is a much welcome change to the formula. Beyond the simplification of combo moves, the gameplay stays pretty much unchanged, clunky and unresponsive as ever. But what can you expect from a 10-month development cycle? Another addition to Anarchy Rules is that we can now experience Joel Gertner on commentary, and he berates us even harder than Joey ever could.
Hip toss?
Not showing any real talent by doing that. New Jack tries to run away. How can you people root for him?
Oh, top wrist lock.
If you thought you were being shit on in the last game just for attempting to play in any other method than punching, well, this game takes the previous and cranks it up to 11. On the bright side, at least the commentary is here, and it well represents ECW. Though, I'm not sure if I'd want Cyrus in the game. I think I've taken enough verbal abuse for one day. Career mode is back, and it would feature a few different paths to play. In addition, the ability to choose an entire stable to play as rather than just one guy is appreciated, as well as there's wrestlers in there who are unavailable at first in exhibition, such as the mad genius himself, Paul Heyman. Again, I would see my ass kicked in almost every single match, as the AI is even more unrelenting than in Hardcore Revolution. It may not translate in the video, but this game feels faster, and I do not have the reaction speed necessary to have any single chance in this mode. The one positive thing I can say is the fact that jobbers have been removed from the mode, so at least I can lose to someone I know. Apart from everything I've mentioned, the game has not changed. It's still the same reskin broken mess it was when Hardcore Revolution released at the start of the year. It's honestly mind-boggling to think that a 10-month development cycle was appropriate to iterate and improve on an already broken formula. There was no getting around this engine to make those improvements, and to start from scratch with a new engine, new textures, and new animations, well, it just wasn't a possibility in 10 months, and the final product really does show. At the time, critics would review Anarchy Rules as one of the worst games of the year. IGN would blast the game, stating, "I'd recommend Anarchy Rules only to ECW fans," and their reaction might be to wonder where everything they liked about the promotion is gone. And they aren't wrong. This game is horrible, and to someone like myself who is as die-hard of an ECW fan as I am, I forced myself to play this over multiple sessions again, just like as Hardcore Revolution. The only reason I'm talking about it today is because it's still ECW, and I love this company over anything else, and it's a travesty that ECW will never receive a game that does justice to the promotion. Now that I've covered the mainline console games of ECW, I wanted to look at one last game. Released around the same time as Hardcore Revolution, it would be received as one of the worst Game Boy games of all time. This is the forgotten port of Hardcore Revolution for the Game Boy Color. Developed by Crawfish, who have developed more shovelware than I can count, made their own version of Hardcore Revolution, and it honestly feels like it was made in an afternoon by a lone developer and published on the same day, which seems to be an awfully common trend with this company. No wonder this game was forgotten. It is beyond unplayable. Just look at this gameplay here. The AI is broken and dominates me every single time. These controls are beyond broken. Watch me as I struggle to figure out how to get up in this game, causing me to lose more times than not. The only ounce of praise I can give for this title is the fact that Mike Awesome is back, but sadly only in JPEG form, because I do not call this blog of pixels Mike Awesome, nor would I call any of these sprites as having any shred of resemblance to their real life counterpart. This game offers 5 modes, but besides training, they should all be called the same thing. You fight your way through increasingly harder matches until you can challenge for the championship. Or at least, that's what I would say if I could get past any of these first matches. As tantalizing as a barbed wire match on the go sounds, don't let that fool you. You're lucky if you have the chance to get near the thing before the AI decides to go full 911 and chokeslams all your enthusiasm that could have been had with this game. So there you have it. Beyond the ports to the Dreamcast and the N64, I have covered the entirety of ECW's foray into the video game world. I'm sure these games would have sold poorly, due to all the other amazing wrestling games that were available at the time. You are honestly doing yourself a disfavor by settling for these reskinned, glitchy, broken messes. It seems that the only benefit of these games came from the fact that Acclaim was investing large sums of money back into the company just to keep it alive for whatever duration ECW had left until its demise in late 2000 and early 2001. If I had to pick a favorite, well, if you could call it that, I would say check out Hardcore Revolution. If to only have a pocket of nostalgia solely from the aesthetic of playing an ECW video game, my complaints are too large in Anarchy Rules to justify the simplifications over controls rather than losing the few things that made it ECW. And if you think my reasoning is because Mike Awesome isn't available in Anarchy Rules, well then you're probably right. I just felt Anarchy Rules was lacking in identity, whereas Hardcore Revolution had some semblance of what it was, even if it was a soulless and lifeless mess. And as for the Game Boy game, well, let's just forget that ever existed. As a longtime fan of ECW, I have accepted that there is no chance that the company will be given another spotlight in video game form. At least I can say the few wrestlers taken from ECW and inserted into SVR 08 and 09 were well picked and do the bare minimum in having a representation of this once rebellious icon of the industry. Thank you so much if you stuck with me throughout this whole video. This has been something I've wanted to cover for a long time, and I hope you enjoyed my first attempt at looking at a video game series like this, and in such a long form nonetheless. Going forward, I'll be returning to the ECW lore videos, and the odd bit about Bloodsport here and there. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. The positive reception I've been getting means so much to me, and I hope to see you all again in the next video. Peace.